So imagine you go to an architect to build a house, right? And they insist that every single room, like the kitchen, the garage, the basement, has to be a bedroom.
Right, which makes literally zero sense.
Exactly. You'd probably fire them on the spot. But for a really long time, that is kind of what early psychology felt like under Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, everything, and I mean, literally everything came back to that one single room. Biological, sexual urges.
It's just such a restrictive blueprint for, something as chaotic and complex as human behavior.
It really is. I mean, for decades, Freud practically had a monopoly on how we viewed the human mind.
But today, we are tearing up those blueprints. We're looking at the rebels, the ones who realized human behavior is actually shaped by society, by culture, and by lifelong growth.
Not just those raw biological instincts.
Right. And to do that, we're diving into section 11.3 of chapter 11 from Psychology 2E. And for this deep dive, I'm actually explicitly playing the role of the curious student today.
Oh,
Yeah, so I am formally handing you the lecturer's chalk, so to speak, to guide us and the listener through all this material.
well, I will happily step into the lecturer role for this one. So the big picture we're looking at here revolves around a group known as the Neo-Freudians.
Neo-Freudians, so like the new Freudians.
Exactly. They were these brilliant psychoanalysts who originally followed Freud. And, they agreed with him on one completely undeniable point, which is that childhood experiences are absolutely critical in shaping who we become.
Okay, so they didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, but they broke away because they realized Freud was basically ignoring the elephant in the room. They wanted to look outward at the social environment and the really powerful effects of culture on personality.
I mean, breaking away from a massive figure like Freud back then must have been, like, professional heresy.
Oh, it was a huge deal.
You can't just disagree with the master without coming up with a totally new baseline for human motivation. Like, if sex and aggression aren't the engines driving the car, what is?
Well, that required a massive paradigm shift. And Alfred Adler was the one who provided it.
Adler. Okay, who was he?
So Adler is a fascinating figure. He was actually the very first president of the Vienna Psychoanalytical Society.
Wait, really? So he was like Freud's right-hand guy?
Yeah, effectively Freud's inner circle.
Yeah.
But he was also the first major theorist to break away and found his own school of thought. He called it individual psychology.
Individual psychology. Okay.
And to answer your question about the engine driving the car, Adler proposed a totally different core motivator. He called it the inferiority complex.
Okay, so people throw the phrase inferiority complex around all the time today,
Yeah.
usually as an insult.
Right, like saying someone's just insecure.
Yeah. But I highly doubt we're using it the way Adler originally intended, right? Like, what did it actually mean to him?
You're totally right. The modern usage is super distorted. To Adler, an inferiority complex isn't just, feeling a little bit insecure. It's this deep-seated feeling that a person fundamentally lacks worth. Like, they just do not measure up to the standards of others or of society. And the kicker is, Adler believed that we all experience this in childhood.
We all do.
Yeah, and if you think about it logically, it makes perfect sense. As a child, you are physically smaller, you're weaker, and you're completely dependent on these gigantic adults around you.
That's true. Like, the kid literally can't reach the kitchen counter. They don't know how to tie their shoes.
Exactly.
They completely rely on someone else for food. So they really are starting from a deficit.
Precisely. You are literally inferior in terms of power and capability. And Adler argued that our entire drive in life, the core engine of personality, is just the attempt to overcome those innate feelings of inferiority.
So we're just trying to gain a sense of superiority or competence.
Exactly. Every thought, emotion, and behavior is fundamentally fueled by this striving to overcome our deficits.
So if I'm understanding this right,
Yeah.
Freud thought we were driven by dark, repressed urges we don't even understand. But Adler thinks we just start life feeling small. And our whole personality is basically us just trying to, like, level up and prove we are capable.
That is the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
You are constantly trying to level up. But here's the major divergence from Freud. Adler focused really heavily on conscious social motives.
Conscious motives.
Yeah, rather than unconscious ones. He believed that this striving for superiority, this leveling up, is something we are explicitly aware of and actively directing.
Okay. Let me pause you there as the student, because I have to push back on that.
Go for it.
If I'm trying to, overcompensate for feeling inadequate next to an older sibling, I am definitely not doing that consciously.
That's a fair point.
Most people walk around entirely blind to why they're acting out or trying to dominate a boardroom. Like, Was Adler maybe giving humanity a bit too much credit?
It's a very fair critique. And honestly, it's one reason Adler's theories eventually had to be integrated with deeper understandings of the unconscious later on.
Hmm.
But Adler's point was that the goals we set to overcome that inferiority are conscious. Like, we consciously choose to pursue a specific career or seek out certain friends.
Oh, I see.
He actually identified 3 fundamental social tasks that all of us have to navigate to feel competent.
What are they?
First, occupational tasks, so our careers and our work. Second, societal tasks, which means our friendships and our role in the community.
Okay, work and friends.
Right. And third, love tasks, finding an intimate partner. Adler believed humanity's true happiness lies in cooperating on these tasks for the common welfare.
Well, that is much more optimistic than Freud. We aren't doomed by biology, we're just striving for social connection.
Exactly.
And actually, speaking of siblings, section 11.3 mentions Adler had a really specific theory about how birth order shapes this whole leveling up process.
Oh, he absolutely did. And it remains like one of his most culturally famous ideas. Adler proposed that your birth order fundamentally dictates how you experience inferiority.
Okay, walk me through that.
Take the oldest child. They start out life with a total monopoly on the parents' attention. They're the center of the universe.
Right.
Then a new baby arrives, and suddenly they are dethroned. So to compensate for that lost attention, Adler argued the oldest child often becomes a driven overachiever.
I mean, that tracks with practically every oldest child I know.
It really does feel accurate sometimes.
So what happens to the youngest then? Because they never get dethroned.
Exactly. There's no one behind them. So Adler argued the youngest children tend to be spoiled and, heavily protected, which can sometimes limit their drive to overcome challenges independently.
Okay, and that leaves the middle child.
Right, who is in a really unique position. They never had the throne to begin with, and they aren't the baby.
So what's their deal?
According to Adler, they often develop the ability to act as a peacemaker. They minimize the negative extreme dynamics of both the oldest and the youngest.
I mean, it paints such a clean, perfect picture of family dynamics. But I do want to highlight a really crucial caveat from our textbook here.
Yes, please do.
It points out that despite how insanely popular birth order theory is in pop psychology, modern research has absolutely not conclusively confirmed Adler's hypotheses.
Right. It's so important to mention that.
Yeah, like, it's a super compelling narrative, but human development just isn't a neat, predictable math equation.
It's a vital distinction to make. We really can't just put people into boxes based on their birth certificate. But, Adler's lasting legacy was really proving that social tasks are what drive us.
Which raises a massive chronological question for me.
What's that?
Well, if Adler is right, and our personalities are built on how we navigate careers, friendships, and love, when do we actually acquire the tools to handle those things?
That is the perfect question.
Did we just suddenly figure it all out at age 18?
Not at all. And that exact question is what brings us to our next theorist, Erikson. If Adler gave us the social tasks, Erikson gave us the map of when and how we actually learn to master them.
Okay, Erikson.
And Erikson's own background beautifully mirrors his theories. The textbook notes he was actually an art school dropout.
Really? An art school dropout?
Yeah, he was just drifting through Europe without a clear identity. And by sheer chance, he was tutoring the children of an American couple undergoing psychoanalysis in Vienna.
Wow.
And through that, he ended up meeting Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter. She saw his potential and basically encouraged him to study psychoanalysis.
Okay, that is the ultimate right place at the right time story.
It really is incredible.
Yeah.
He earned his diploma in 1933, but as Nazism began sweeping across Europe, he was forced to flee to the United States.
Man, that's heavy.
Yeah, and it was in the U.S. that he fully formulated his massive departure from traditional psychoanalysis. He called it the psychosocial theory of development.
Psychosocial, okay.
You see, Freud insisted that your personality was essentially set in stone by early childhood. Like, if you were messed up at age 5, you were messed up for life.
That is so bleak.
Very. But Erikson looked at human behavior and said, absolutely not. Personality is actively developing across the entire lifespan.
Wait, really? So we don't just, max out our character stats at 18. A 65-year-old is still fundamentally building their personality.
Absolutely. Erikson argued that social relationships challenge us at every single stage of life. He mapped out 8 specific stages, all the way from birth to late adulthood.
8 stages. That's a lot to cover.
It is, but the genius of his theory is that each stage revolves around a specific conflict or a developmental
Like a
task.
boss battle.
Kind of. You have to successfully resolve that conflict to build a healthy personality.
Wow.
And if you fail a stage, it creates this cascading effect that damages your ability to handle the next one.
Okay, let's see this cascading effect in action as the student here. How does the foundation get poured?
It starts in infancy, so ages 0 to 1. The conflict is trust versus mistrust.
Trust versus mistrust.
Right. A baby is completely helpless. So the core psychological task is simply learning whether the world is a safe, predictable place.
That makes total sense.
If caregivers are responsive and meet the baby's needs, the child develops trust. If they're neglectful, the child develops mistrust and basically views the world as dangerous.
That makes sense as a foundation. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't trust the floor, you're not going to try to walk on it. So what's next?
Exactly. Stage 2, ages 1 to 3, is autonomy versus shame and doubt.
The terrible twos.
Exactly. Now, the toddler is mobile. They want to pick out their own clothes, feed themselves. They are establishing autonomy.
Right.
But if a parent constantly suppresses that or ridicules their choices, the child begins to doubt their own abilities, which leads to shame.
Oof. So they either learn they have agency or they learn they are fundamentally incompetent.
Right, and that leads right into stage 3, ages 3 to 6. Initiative versus guilt.
What happens here?
Here, children begin to plan activities and initiate play. If they're allowed to explore and lead, they develop self-confidence and purpose.
And if they aren't?
If their initiative is constantly stifled or punished, they develop deep-seated guilt about their own desires.
Okay, I really see the domino effect now. If you fail to build trust as a baby, you won't have the courage to assert autonomy as a toddler.
Yep.
And if you lack autonomy, you'll feel way too much shame to take initiative as a young child. So what happens when this kid finally gets to school?
Then stage 4 hits. Ages 7 to 11. Industry versus inferiority. Now they are comparing themselves to their peers.
Ah, this is where Adler's concepts really show up.
Totally. The child either develops a sense of pride and industry in their schoolwork, sports, and social life, or if they don't measure up, they feel inferior and inadequate.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the absolute crucible of human development, the teenage years.
The famous stage 5, ages 12 to 18. Identity versus confusion. This is the bridge between childhood and adulthood.
Trying on different hats.
Yes. Teenagers experiment with different roles, ideologies, and tier groups. They're constantly asking, who am I? If they successfully navigate this, they emerge with a strong sense of identity. If they don't, they are left with role confusion, unsure of what they want to do or who they even are.
And this is where Erikson's cascading logic becomes so brilliant to me. Because if you don't know who you are, how can you possibly share your life with someone else?
You've hit the nail on the head. That is stage 6, ages 19 to 29, intimacy versus isolation.
Wow.
You must have a strong sense of self before you can develop successful, intimate relationships with others. Adults who haven't developed a positive self-concept in adolescence often experience profound emotional isolation.
It's almost tragic when you look at it that way. Like, an adult struggling with isolation at 25 might actually just be dealing with the fallout of an unresolved identity crisis from when they were 15.
It's entirely possible.
So what are the final 2 stages of adulthood?
Stage 7 spans most of our adult lives, ages 30 to 64. Generativity versus stagnation. Yeah, once intimacy is established, the focus shifts outward. It involves finding your life's work, raising a family, mentoring others, basically contributing to society.
And if you fail?
Those who fail to do this feel stagnant and disconnected from the world.
Makes sense. And the last stage?
Finally, stage 8, ages 65 and up. Integrity versus despair. In the twilight of life, we look back. We either feel a sense of integrity, proud of what we've accomplished, or we feel overwhelming regret and despair over a life misspent.
Man, it is an incredibly comprehensive map of the human lifespan. Erikson really shows us how the conscious social conflicts dictate our growth.
He really does.
But while Erikson gave us the map of an individual life, I know our next theorist zoomed way out to give us the blueprint of humanity itself, right? Carl Jung.
Yes, Carl Jung is one of the most mesmerizing figures in psychology. He was a Swiss psychiatrist, and initially he was actually Freud's prized protege.
Another one in the inner circle?
Exactly. But Jung eventually realized he just could not accept Freud's obsession with the sexual drive. So he split off to develop his own framework, which he called analytical psychology.
So if Adler went toward social tasks and Erikson went toward lifespan conflicts, where did Jung go?
Jung actually dove back down into the unconscious mind, but he envisioned it completely differently than Freud did.
How so?
Well, Jung believed the goal of life, especially in the second half of life, was a continuous learning process of integrating conscious and unconscious thought.
Okay.
But here is where he really revolutionized the field. Jung agreed with Freud that we have a personal unconscious, our own forgotten memories and repressed thoughts.
Right, the standard Freud stuff.
But Jung introduced a massive new layer beneath that. He called it the collective unconscious.
The collective unconscious.
Mm.
Okay, let me try to wrap my head around this with an analogy.
Mm.
Are you saying the human mind operates kind of like a computer? Like, my personal unconscious is the specific apps I've downloaded and the files I've saved, but the collective unconscious is the base operating system that comes pre-installed on every single human being's hard drive.
That is a phenomenal analogy, yes. The collective unconscious is a universal repository. Jung believed it holds mental patterns or memory traces that are shared by the entire human species.
Shared by everyone.
Yes, he called these ancestral memories archetypes.
So, like pre-installed avatar templates, what do these archetypes actually look like in practice?
They're the universal themes and symbols you see repeated in literature, art, religion, and dreams. And this happens across completely disconnected cultures throughout history.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it. No matter where you look in the world, cultures that never interacted with one another all tell stories about the hero overcoming darkness, or the sage dispensing wisdom, the maiden, the trickster.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Jung argued that we don't invent these symbols, we inherit them. They reflect universal human challenges like facing death, gaining independence, or striving for mastery.
I am fascinated by this, but as a student here, I need to ask the biological question. Does the textbook suggest this is literally written into our DNA? Like, is the concept of a hero, a genetic trait, the same way eye color is? Because that sounds highly implausible.
It's a crucial distinction, and the textbook specifically clarifies this exact point.
Oh, good.
While Jung himself, writing a century ago, suspected these themes might be handed down biologically, modern science tells a totally different story.
I figured.
Research confirms that symbolic information, like the specific narrative of a hero, is absolutely not encoded on the genome. A newborn infant cannot decode complex cultural symbolism.
So it's not biological destiny. We aren't born with a literal fairy tale in our genetic code.
Correct. Today, scholars understand that these archetypes emerge from a combination of our innate human capacities, like our biological capacity to learn language or feel fear crashing into universal environmental and cultural experiences.
Oh, I see.
They're emergent properties of the human experience, not strict biological instincts.
Okay, that makes much more logical sense. And Jung didn't just spend his time in the clouds with mythology either. He actually gave us some of the most practical, everyday terminology we use to describe human personality, right?
He did. Jung gave us the concepts of introversion and extroversion.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. They are so fundamental that almost all modern models of personality include them. But the way we use them today is often incredibly superficial.
Right, because people usually just think extrovert means loud and outgoing, and introvert just means shy and antisocial.
Exactly.
But Jung was getting at something much deeper regarding the mechanics of the mind, wasn't he?
He was. It's not about shyness at all. It is fundamentally about the mechanics of psychic energy. It's about how your battery drains and recharges.
The battery.
Okay. If you are an extrovert, your internal battery is charged by the friction of the external world. You are energized by interacting with others.
Right.
You derive your psychic energy from outside yourself, which is why extroverts often think out loud, act quickly, and seek external engagement.
And the introvert.
The introvert's battery works the exact opposite way. The external world social friction, crowds, constant interaction drains their energy.
They need to unplug.
Right. They are energized by inner psychic activity. They recharge in solitude. They process internally, think deeply before speaking, and prefer focusing intensely on one topic rather than bouncing around.
That makes total sense.
Jung actually believed that true self-realization requires balancing both of these attitudes.
That reframing is so helpful. Introversion isn't an affliction. It's literally just a different energy system.
Precisely.
Now, there's one more Jungian concept I want to touch on, and it perfectly bridges into our final theorist, the persona. What did Jung mean by the persona?
The persona is the mask we wear. Jung argued that the persona is a conscious creation. It's an interface we build, derived from both our personal experiences and those collective archetypes.
Okay.
It is a necessary compromise between our true, raw self and the expectations of society.
So if my true self is like a bit chaotic or unacceptable, I build this user interface, this mask, so I can successfully function at my accounting job without getting fired.
Perfect example.
Society demands predictability, so we wear the mask.
Exactly. We hide the parts of ourselves that just don't align with social norms.
Which brings us perfectly to our final theorist, Horney. Because if Jung says society quietly forces us to wear a mask, Horney looks at what happens when the society and culture around us are actively hostile and anxiety-inducing.
Yes.
She looked at how cultural pressures shape our coping mechanisms, and in doing so, she basically completely dismantled Freud's biological determinism.
Horney is a powerhouse in the history of psychology. She was one of the very first women trained as a Freudian psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
Like Erikson, she moved to the United States during the Great Depression, actually, and eventually distanced herself from Freud's strict early childhood focus.
What did she focus on instead?
She believed that the goal of psychoanalysis shouldn't just be digging up childhood trauma, it should be actively helping a person move toward a healthy, functioning self.
And she didn't just politely disagree with Freud, did she? She went right after one of his most deeply entrenched and, frankly, offensive ideas.
Oh, she went right for it. She directly attacked Freud's concept of penis envy.
Right.
Freud argued that women's psychology was inherently shaped by an unconscious jealousy of male biological anatomy. And Horney, brilliantly, called nonsense on this.
I love that.
She argued that any jealousy between the genders has absolutely nothing to do with biology and everything to do with culture.
It's a cultural issue.
Yes. If women seemed envious, it was because they envied the institutional power, the privileges, and the autonomy that men held in a patriarchal society.
It's the difference between saying, I envy your biology versus I envy your ability to vote and own property.
Exactly.
It's a staggering cultural critique.
Absolutely, and she hammered the point home by flipping the script entirely, suggesting that men might actually suffer from womb envy.
Womb envy.
Yeah, a deep-seated psychological inadequacy because men are biologically incapable of carrying and giving birth to life.
That is amazing.
She used it to highlight how cultural privilege, not anatomy, is what drives neurosis.
Pure brilliance.
Yes.
Now, when we look at her actual theory of personality, section 11.3 says Horney focused heavily on something called basic anxiety.
Yes.
She argued this stems from childhood experiences of loneliness or isolation. How exactly do children learn to survive that deep existential feeling of being alone in a hostile world?
Well, Horney theorized that to handle basic anxiety, children develop 3 distinct styles of coping. And these aren't just minor habits, they become the fundamental ways people relate to the rest of humanity.
What is the first coping style?
The first is moving toward people. This strategy relies entirely on affiliation and dependence.
Moving toward.
A child experiencing deep anxiety might cling to their parents. They become highly compliant just to guarantee they receive attention, affection, and safety.
So they basically outsource their security to someone else.
Exactly.
What happens when that clinging child grows into an adult?
As adults, they run the exact same program. They express an intense, compulsive need for love and acceptance. They might become severely codependent, attaching themselves to partners or friends to soothe their internal anxiety because they're terrified of abandonment.
Okay, so that is moving toward. What happens if the child goes the opposite direction? What is the second style?
The second is moving against people. This relies on aggression and assertiveness.
Moving against.
Right. A child in a hostile environment might conclude that the only way to survive is to fight. They deal with their insecurity by bullying, dominating, or defying others.
I instantly think of, like, internet trolls or that hyper-aggressive boss who has to demean everyone in the room to feel secure. Is that the adult manifestation of this?
You've nailed it. As adults, people utilizing this coping style often lash out. They can be incredibly abrasive, constantly challenging others, or exploiting people to maintain a rigid sense of control.
Because they think everyone is out to get them.
Exactly. They believe the world is hostile, so they strike first to protect themselves.
Man, it's a sad, isolating way to live. Which leaves the third style. What if they don't cling and they don't fight?
The third style is moving away from people. This centers on detachment and extreme isolation.
Moving away.
Yeah. These children handle anxiety by emotionally withdrawing. They build a fortress around themselves, becoming highly self-sufficient so they never have to rely on anyone else.
And when they grow up?
As adults, they are the profound loners. They avoid emotional intimacy, they avoid love, and they avoid deep friendships because connection literally feels like a vulnerability. They often seek out careers and lifestyles that require minimal human interaction.
Now, wait a minute. If I'm an introvert who just likes my alone time, or if I deeply value my romantic partner's validation, does Horney classify me as neurotic?
No, and this is where Horney was very careful. She explicitly stated that these three styles, moving toward, against, or away, are completely normal ways that we all cope with day-to-day problems.
Oh, okay.
We all need connection, we all need to assert ourselves, and we all need space. These strategies only become neurotic when they are used rigidly and compulsively.
When you can't turn them off.
Exactly. It's when a person is so paralyzed by internal anxiety that they are locked into one single style of coping, to the point that it alienates them from a healthy, balanced life.
It's the difference between leaning on your partner after a bad day versus being entirely incapable of spending a single hour alone.
Exactly. It's all about flexibility versus compulsion.
Wow. Stepping out of my student role for a moment, this has been a genuinely profound journey. Thank you for walking us through these mechanisms so clearly.
It has been a pleasure. It really highlights the massive, necessary shift in how psychology views the human mind.
It absolutely does. I mean, we started with Freud's incredibly narrow biologically determined room. And then we watched Adler blow the doors off by showing us the positive, conscious drive for worth.
Yeah.
We saw Erikson build an intricate 8-story house, showing how failure in childhood echoes into adulthood. We explored Jung's collective operating system and the masks we wear to survive society.
And we finished with Horney.
Right, Horney showed us how our deep cultural anxieties dictate whether we cling to people, fight them, or hide from them.
It proves that we are vastly more intricate, adaptable, and socially bound than early theorists ever gave us credit for.
So as we close the book on this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
What's the
Well, we spent all this time talking about the external forces that mold us. But if your personality is shaped by your birth order, if your struggles are just the echo of a failed childhood stage, if your mind is running universal cultural archetypes, and if your social habits are just the ways you learn to survive childhood anxiety, how much of you is actually your own original creation, and how much is simply a beautifully complex reaction to the world around you?